Welcome to Tendoc Talks about the Power Rangers role-playing game. In today's video, we're going to go over how to create your own monster. Renegade Games put out a guide. It's kind of like a beta. I get the heavy impression that they're going to make a better version of this at some point, and that it's going to be in a book of its own, or that there's going to be some kind of monster manual or something like that. But this is the first draft that we have. It's about 8 pages long, and I'm not going to be able to get through the entire thing in one video, but I'll get as far as I can. Before we can talk about how to make your own monster, there are some basics that we need to cover, because before you can even start, there's some things you need to understand that will help gauge the power level of your monster and what you want it to do. The guide starts off with some advice. It says, lean into your specializations. If your monster has skills that they're specialized in, roll them as specializations as often as you can. So if they specialize in might, then constantly be utilizing that. Look for anomalies. Anomalies are opportunities. If a threat has a D6 in every trained skill except one has a D8, that's the stat block telling you the unique opportunities for using this threat. And then finally, speed. Speed is key. It dictates how many actions a creature gets. Creatures with speed 1 get a standard action or a move action on their turn. Unless they're in a position to affect the PCs when they roll for initiative, speed 1 characters need to spend their first turn setting up for a future turn, hoping they last that long. It's just as important to remember what high speed characters can do. A creature with speed 3 has a free action. If they don't use it practically, like opening a door, they can do something fun with it, like buy additional movement. Free actions can also power special abilities, depending on the special ability. And free actions, you can use it to buy extra movement. I think every free action you spend is 5 feet more movement. So you don't want to give your brand new monsters a super high speed without acknowledging the kinds of things that could cause. If your monster has something like a 6, 7, or 8 speed, be careful what abilities you give it. Like, this ability is powered by a free action. Well, then you might want to put a limit on it, like only usable once a turn, or something like that. Otherwise, the ability could get broken pretty fast. By the time you reach higher levels and use more complex creatures, their unique powers overshadow what they can do with basic skills. This simplifies running them and puts them in line with the power levels of the PCs. Skills represent broad talents, whereas powers represent special abilities. I don't hate that. It makes sense. So basically, before they tell you how to make a monster, they're like, here's the mindset to be inside of for the monsters that we've already created. Now we have to discuss what threat levels mean, because this is how you set the power level of your monster. All threats have a threat level, sometimes abbreviated as TL. A threat's level indicate how challenging it is. 4 rangers of a creature's threat level should be able to reliably defeat it. So if it's level 1, 4 level 1 rangers should be able to beat it without expending any major resources. If combat ends and the team has no limited use abilities left, you've run a combat that's probably about 2 threats level higher than the squad's level, which would be perfect for a boss fight, but not something you want to throw on your standard podunk enemy to defeat. And then they go into specifics here. But I think you got the concept, right? So a level 5 monster should be able to be handled by 4 level 5 rangers. And if you want to make it an actual boss at the end of an encounter, then you should probably make it a level 7. But don't go anywhere higher than that, or the rangers won't be able to handle it without more members to the team. Multiple threats. Power Rangers don't always outnumber their opponents. Combats can include more than one threat, and there's a couple of ways to calculate that. But my favorite one is greatest threat, then half the rest. So if you have a level 7 monster and 3 level 2s, then your challenge rating or your threat level of that encounter is the level 7 plus half 2, half 2, half 2, which is 1, 1, 1, which is 7, 8, 9, 10. Challenge rating 10, meaning a party of 4 Power Rangers at level 10 should be able to handle a level 7 monster and 3 level 2s. That's the best way. And do that and you probably won't run into very much trouble. If you're running a combat with a number of Rangers other than 4, there's a way to calculate that too. And the formula is basically take the number of characters, multiply it by their average level, and then divide by 4, and you're done. If that sounds complicated, don't really worry about it. Here's an example, though. 3 7th level Rangers are about as strong as 5.25 Power Rangers if there had been 4 of them. And 6 level 7 Rangers is about as strong as 4 level 10.5 Rangers. And in this case, don't round up or down. In this case, don't round up, round down, otherwise your encounter will be too tough for what you've planned. I hope that's not very confusing, but generally, I hope you have an idea of what a threat level is. Right? So I wouldn't, well, we'll get to that in a second. All right, now we're actually in the threat creation rules proper. And the first thing you have to figure out is your concept. So, number 1, what is this threat and what do you want it to do? They have a couple of examples, right? A gladiator pig at a cookout, a walking pile of eyeballs, and a monster with a hero's purse as his head. The faster you can get across its unique qualities, the stronger the idea. There's no wrong way to come up with a concept. This is just to give you an idea to fall back on if one of the later steps stumps you. We all want to create monsters that affect our players in memorable ways. And the easiest way to do that is to use inside jokes and your player's darkest fears. That's the most fun way to do it. Make the arachnophobe who summons spiders. Or, cell phone man who can distract by attacking someone's willpower. Or show them a cringy post they just did to attack their cleverness and make them lose a turn or something like that. Just come up with a fun concept and don't worry about the rules just yet. Just come up with a monster that you think would be funny or awesome to put in the game. Next, you have to decide your threat level. How dangerous do you want this to be? Is it the boss monster? Is it the boss monster's right-hand man? Or is this your version of whatever the putties are? Your standard mooks that run around that make the other characters feel cool and powerful. Cogs, Tengu warriors, putties, whatever. Don't worry about doing perks, powers, or attacks yet. That's a little later. Just conceptually, what do you want? Generally, if you're making mooks, they should be 2 levels lower than your Power Rangers average team. If you're making a lieutenant or a second-hand man, then he should be 1 level lower than the Power Rangers team. And then the boss monster of the week should be your Power Rangers party's level. People talk about the standard combat encounters, like 3 encounters, an easy one, a moderately hard one, and then the hardest one that you're working toward. If you're gonna just throw one monster without any mooks and without the 3 encounter rule, then it would make sense to make this monster 2 levels higher than the party. Because these rules assume that the monsters are fresh, but the rangers are not. They've been adventuring or taking damage. So if you're going to do your enemy monster of the week is the same level as the Power Rangers, then there better be some encounters before this to bring their resources down. And I think this is a good idea. Mooks being 2 levels lower than the party, some kind of mid-encounter 1 level lower than the party, and then the final encounter is the level of the party with not much time in between to heal. Alright, so next, health, size, and movement. I'm a little upset because they go over health and movement, but they completely blow over size. In fact, there are no rules here at all about how to make a monster grown. Which sucks, because that's a very important part of Power Rangers. Their stats are better. How do I reflect that mechanically? Well, we don't know yet. But hey, this is better than nothing, right? Okay, so health. How much damage does it take to defeat your threat? And there's 3 ways to calculate health. Or that is to say, there are 3 types of monster with varying levels of health. And they call it resilient, typical, and canny. Your monster can be one of those 3 types. A typical monster has a few decent attacks and a few perks that can manipulate battle in their favor. Their health equals their threat level. So if they're threat level 5, they have 5 health. Easy. A resilient monster is primarily a combatant. It relies on more on attacks than perks and powers, so they tend to be fairly simple but tough. They have as much health as their threat level times 1.5. And I don't know if you should round up or down. You can choose. So if they're level 5, they'll either have 7 or 8 hit points. And last, canny. These are battlefield manipulators. They use their various perks and powers to do fighting for them, and they rarely attack directly using their skills. They have as much health as 3/4 of their threat level. I'm just going to use an easy number, like 4. So 3/4 of that would be 3. Minimum 1, it says. And if you're just making level 0 threats, they should have a maximum health of 2. So 1 or 2. These are your putties, your Tengu warriors, your whatever. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it's pretty straightforward. And movement. So most threats have a ground movement, though some might have an air movement and some might have a swim movement. Resilient and canny threats should move at 30 feet. And typical threats should move at 40 feet. And this is ground movement. So even though they're called typical, they're actually they're a rounded character. They're like an all-arounder, because like the resilient ones are combat focused, the canny ones are ability focused, and this is right in between. And they have increased movement speed to boot. All right, let's see if we can cover essence scores and skill ranks real quick. All right, so a threat level 0 creature has 6 essence points to assign to their 4 essence scores: strength, speed, smarts, and social. For every additional threat level, add 2 essence points. So a threat level 10 creature has 26 essence points to spend. If you want to look at it mathematically, take the threat level of whatever it is you're designing, multiply it by 2, and then add 6. That's how many essence points you have to spend. And every time you spend an essence point to increase an essence score, you get a skill point to invest in skills tied to that essence. So if you ever wondered where those stats came from in the book, this is how. Kind of. Because you'll find out later that they're fairly flexible on how you build a character. Skills. Here are a few tips for investing your monster skill points. Fewer higher rank skill make a threat easier to run. It's also easier to run a threat when the majority of their skills have the same rank. For example, Chunky Chicken has 4 skills all ranked at D4, and the only things that are like D6 or higher are its combat ability. So they're saying, don't make it complicated for yourself. Try to find some themes and make as many skills the same rank as you can, except for the ones that should stand out. Like if you made a Guitar Man, his performance should be high, and, well, we'll get to attacking later. Note, it's okay to leave some blanks if you don't see yourself using smart and social skills, for example, other than alertness. You can still increase your smarts and social to shore up your willpower and cleverness without fleshing out where those skill points went. So don't worry about it. And it says, if you decide later that, oh, this monster should have that skill, you can go ahead and spend the skill points right then. But if something doesn't make sense, they're just saying, just don't do it. Just hold on to it. Hold on to those points. Use them later or don't use them at all. A threat doesn't always need both might and finesse. Pick the one that reflects its style of melee combat. The same can be said about athletics and acrobatics, and to a lesser extent, intimidation and deception. So they're saying don't make everything match. That's not interesting. Don't forget initiative, which is a skill under speed. If a threat doesn't have any ranks, they roll the skill test with snag, and that's not a great way to start combat. Unless that's the monster's whole spiel, like it doesn't move, or it's a tank of some kind. Or it's a really big threat and you want the whole team to go first. Another thing to keep in mind, after D6 in a skill, a specialization is usually better than the next higher skill rank when it comes to the main skill the threat uses in combat. So if you want to put 4 points into melee might, maybe stop at D6 and make the next point a specialization instead of going into the D8. Because skills, specializations are very powerful. Not only do they make it easier to crit, but they also dictate what defenses you're allowed to defend with. The minimum rank needed for a specialization is D2, by the way. However, if you use a specialization at D2, mechanically it doesn't really do anything. It just kind of future-proofs you for when you get the D4 or if you get any upshifts. And the golden rule, if you can't find a way to get both the defenses and the skill ranks you want, perks are your friend. So you can use special abilities to kind of round this out. Alright, last. Once you've assigned all your essence points and invested all of your skill points, you can calculate your threat's defenses. If the difference between your threat's highest defense and lowest defense is their level or less, the defenses are fairly balanced. So if you're making a target threat level 5 monster and your toughness is 5 and that's your highest, and your cleverness is, I don't know why I said 5, 15, which is your highest, and your cleverness is 10, then you're probably okay. I don't know if I like that though, because like, if you're threat level 10 or 20 and your highest and lowest are 20 different, I feel like that's a problem. But whatever. They said it, not me. If you feel your threats' defenses should be higher, you can increase them with perks. Alright, there's a couple more sections left. I didn't cover perks, powers, and hangups. I didn't cover attacks. And I didn't cover the very last section, which they call Make It Yours. It's going to have to be in a part 2. This video is getting kind of long. But look forward to that, and stay tuned for more.